The lawyer's office smelled like expensive leather and broken promises. "Mrs. Ashford, I need you to understand the reality of your situation." Gregory Hamilton, Jonathan's attorney, slid a document across the mahogany table with the confidence of a man who'd never lost. "You signed a prenuptial agreement 11 years ago. It's ironclad. In the event of divorce, you receive nothing from the Ashford estate. No alimony, no property division, no assets. You leave with exactly what you brought into the marriage." Across from me, Jonathan stared at his hands. My husband of 11 years couldn't even look at me while his lawyer delivered the kill shot. "Furthermore," Hamilton continued, "Mrs. Celeste Ashford is prepared to testify that you entered this marriage under false pretenses, that you manipulated her son, and that you've been living off the Ashford family wealth for over a decade while contributing nothing." I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, face expressionless. Years of working in investment banking had taught me never to show emotion during negotiations. Never let them see you sweat, never let them know when they've hit a nerve, even when they just stabbed you in the heart. "May I see the prenuptial agreement?" I asked calmly. Hamilton's smile widened. He'd been waiting for this. He pulled out a thick document, pages and pages of legalese, and placed it in front of me. "Signed and witnessed 11 years ago, 3 weeks before your wedding." I looked at the signature on the final page. Victoria Morgan, my maiden name, in handwriting that looked almost exactly like mine. "Almost. I see," I said quietly. My own attorney, Adriana Chen, leaned forward. "We'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months, ever since Jonathan had announced he wanted a divorce. Ever since his mother Celeste had started circling like a vulture, preparing to strip me of everything." "May we have a moment alone with our client?" Adriana asked. "Of course." Hamilton stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "But I'd encourage Mrs. Ashford to consider settlement. Fighting this prenup will only cost her money she doesn't have and embarrass her publicly. The Ashford family is prepared to offer $20,000 as a gesture of goodwill, provided she signs a non-disclosure agreement and leaves quietly." $20,000. After 11 years of marriage to one of the wealthiest families in Boston. After building my own career while managing Jonathan's life, hosting his mother's endless social events, playing the perfect wife to a man who'd never once defended me, they thought I was worth $20,000. Jonathan finally looked up. "Tori, please. Just take the money. Make this easy." "Easy? For whom?" "I'll consider it," I said, my voice betraying nothing. Hamilton and Jonathan left the conference room. The moment the door closed, I turned to Adriana. "That's not my signature." "I know," she said, pulling out her own folder. "I had it analyzed by 3 different handwriting experts. The prenup is a forgery. A good one, but definitely a forgery." "So Celeste fabricated it?" "Almost certainly. Probably shortly after you and Jonathan got engaged. She's been planning this exit strategy for 11 years, waiting for the moment Jonathan would finally cave to her pressure and divorce you." I stood up, walked to the window overlooking downtown Boston. 11 years ago, I'd been 26, a rising star at a major investment bank, making $200,000 a year and on track for promotion. I'd met Jonathan at a charity gala, been charmed by his kindness, his humor, his apparent independence from his wealthy family. What I hadn't seen was the invisible leash his mother had on him. The way she controlled every major decision in his life. The way she'd been systematically poisoning him against me from day one. "There's more," Adriana said. "I've been going through the financial records you provided. The paper trail is extraordinary." I turned back to face her. "Tell me." 3 years ago, when Marcus Ashford died, the family business was on the verge of bankruptcy. Bad investments, poor management, Marcus's medical bills, they were drowning. According to these records, someone injected $5 million into the company to keep it afloat. "That someone was me," I said quietly. "I know. I have the wire transfer records. But here's the interesting part, all the documentation shows the money coming from Ashford Family Trust. Someone went to great lengths to make it look like Celeste saved the company with family money. But it was my money. From my bonuses, my investments, my savings. Exactly. And then, over the next 3 years, there were additional transfers. 2 million here, 1 million there, always at critical moments when the company needed capital. Always documented as coming from family accounts, but actually coming from you. I'd given them $8 million to save their failing legacy. $8 million of my own money, earned through my own work, sacrificed to keep the Ashford name from becoming synonymous with bankruptcy, and Celeste had taken credit for all of it. Can we prove it? I asked. Adriana smiled, and it was the smile of a lawyer who'd just found the winning strategy. Not only can we prove it, but we can prove that Celeste deliberately misrepresented the source of those funds to investors, creditors, and family members. That's fraud. And since the company is now profitable again, worth approximately $30 million, and since your $8 million directly saved it, I own a portion of that company. At minimum, you're owed your $8 million back with interest. But if we argue that you were an essential investor who saved the company when no one else would, we could make a case for significant equity. I sat back down, processing. Celeste had forged a prenup to ensure I got nothing in the divorce. But she'd also stolen credit for my financial rescue of her family business. 2 separate frauds, both designed to erase my contributions and paint me as a worthless gold digger. Have you ever spent 11 years being called a leech by people who were actually draining you dry? It's a special kind of psychological warfare, where your abusers convince everyone, including sometimes yourself, that you're the problem. What's our strategy? I asked. We go to court. We expose the forged prenup. We present evidence of your financial contributions. We demand either full repayment with interest, or equity in the company, or both. And we make sure everyone knows exactly what Celeste Ashford did. Jonathan will hate me. Jonathan already chose his mother over you. He's been choosing her for 11 years. That was true. Every time Celeste had made a snide comment about my background, working class, how quaint, Jonathan had stayed silent. Every time she'd suggested I was only with him for money, he'd changed the subject rather than defend me. Every time she'd orchestrated some social humiliation, he'd told me I was being too sensitive. He'd chosen her every single time. This divorce was just the final, official choice. Do it, I said. File everything. I want a court date. And I want Celeste subpoenaed to testify. This will get ugly, Tori. The Ashfords will fight back hard. They'll try to destroy your reputation, your career, everything. Let them try, I said, and felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. I'd been playing nice for 11 years, trying to be the daughter-in-law Celeste could accept, the wife Jonathan deserved. I'm done playing nice. One more thing, Adriana said. I had investigators look into Celeste's finances. There are some irregularities. Shell companies, offshore accounts, transactions that don't quite add up. I think she's been hiding assets, possibly tax evasion. Give everything to the IRS, I said. Anonymously, if necessary. But make sure they audit her. Adriana grinned. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to win. 2 weeks later, I received a phone call from Celeste herself. Victoria, darling, we need to talk. I hadn't heard from her directly since the divorce announcement. All communication had been through lawyers, carefully documented and deliberately cold. About what, Celeste? This ridiculous lawsuit you've filed. Claiming the prenup is forged? Demanding money from the family business? Darling, you're embarrassing yourself. I was at my office, 40 floors above the city, reviewing quarterly reports for my clients. I put her on speaker and kept working. The prenup is forged. The handwriting analysis proves it. And the money I put into Ashford Industries was mine, documented and traceable. You have no proof of that. The records show those funds came from family accounts. Records you falsified, I said calmly. Which is fraud. But we can let the court decide. There was a pause. Celeste wasn't used to people standing up to her. In her world, you either obeyed or you were destroyed. There was no third option. I'm offering you $100,000 to drop this, she said finally. Take the money, sign the NDA, and disappear from our lives quietly. 100,000. She'd raised her offer from 20,000, which meant I was making her nervous. No. 200,000. No. Victoria, be reasonable. You can't win this. We have the best lawyers money can buy. We have connections, influence, reputation. You're a nobody from a working-class family in Ohio who got lucky enough to marry up. Don't throw away my generosity by being greedy. There it was. The contempt she'd been hiding under false courtesy for 11 years. The real opinion she'd always had of me. Celeste, I said, do you know what I did before I married Jonathan? You worked at some bank. I was a senior investment banker at Goldman Sachs. I managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I advised Fortune 500 companies on mergers and acquisitions. I was making $500,000 a year by the time I was 28. If you were so successful, why did you need to marry my son? I didn't need to marry him. I loved him. Or I thought I did. I thought I was marrying a man who'd be my partner, my equal. Instead, I married a man whose mother controlled his every decision and who treated me like I was lucky to be tolerated. You were lucky. I gave up a career trajectory that would have made me a managing director by now. I deferred my ambitions to support Jonathan's. I poured $8 million of my own money into your failing company to save your family's reputation. And you forged a prenup to make sure I'd get nothing when you finally convinced your son to divorce me. Silence on the other end. I'd never spoken to her like this before. 11 years of swallowing my anger, playing the role of the grateful daughter-in-law, accepting her insults with grace. No more. The court date is set for 6 weeks from now, I continued. I'll see you there. And Celeste? Bring your checkbook. You're going to need it. I hung up before she could respond. Adriana called 10 minutes later. Please tell me you recorded that conversation. Every second. She offered me $200,000 to go away. Perfect. That's evidence she knows the prenup is fraudulent. If it were legitimate, she wouldn't need to buy you off. She also basically admitted she's been underestimating me for 11 years. Most people underestimate you, Tori. You're quiet, you're polite, you don't cause scenes. People mistake that for weakness. Their mistake, I said. Over the next month, the legal warfare intensified. Hamilton filed motions to dismiss, arguing the prenup was valid and my claims were baseless. Adriana countered with the handwriting analysis, the financial records, evidence of fraud. The court scheduled depositions. Jonathan would have to testify. Celeste would have to testify. Every dirty secret, every hidden transaction, every lie, all of it would come out in open court. Jonathan called me 3 times, begging me to settle. Tori, please. This is destroying the family. Mother is having panic attacks. Can't we just end this quietly? Your mother forged a legal document and committed fraud, I said. This isn't about family drama. This is about crimes. She was trying to protect the family assets, by stealing credit for my money? By erasing my contributions? By making sure I'd be left with nothing after 11 years of marriage? You knew what you were signing up for when you married into this family. That sentence hung between us, revealing everything. He'd always known how his mother treated me. He'd always known I was considered an outsider, a gold digger, someone who didn't belong. And he'd been fine with it, as long as I played along. Goodbye, Jonathan, I said, and hung up. The night before the court hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my apartment, the one I'd bought with my own money, the sanctuary Celeste had never been allowed to decorate or critique, and thought about what tomorrow would bring. In court, I would have to face Jonathan, face Celeste, face the entire Ashford family and their judgment. I would have to present evidence of how I'd been used, manipulated, erased. I would have to admit publicly that the marriage I'd tried so hard to make work had been a lie from the start. Some people might call that humiliating. Might say I should take whatever settlement they offered and walk away with my dignity intact. But those people didn't understand, my dignity was exactly what I was fighting for. For 11 years, I'd let Celeste Ashford tell me who I was. The gold digger. The outsider. The girl who'd gotten lucky. The wife who contributed nothing. Tomorrow, I was going to tell her exactly who I really was. And she was going to pay for every lie she'd told. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I'd imagined something grand and dramatic, like in the movies. Instead, it was just a functional space with fluorescent lighting, uncomfortable wooden benches, and the smell of old paper and anxiety. The Ashford family filled 3 rows on the right side. Celeste sat in the front, dressed in black Chanel, her posture perfect, her face composed. Next to her, Jonathan looked miserable. Behind them, various cousins, business associates, family friends, all there to watch me be put in my place. On my side sat my mother, Eleanor, who'd taken a bus from Ohio to be here. And Adriana, reviewing her notes one final time. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Whitmore. We stood. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd heard every lie the legal system had to offer. Please be seated. We're here for the matter of Ashford versus Ashford, divorce proceedings with contested prenuptial agreement. Counselors, are we ready to proceed? Hamilton stood. Ready, Your Honor. Adriana stood. Ready, Your Honor. Mr. Hamilton, you may present your opening statement. Hamilton was smooth, confident, a lawyer who'd won hundreds of cases for wealthy clients. Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter. Mrs. Victoria Ashford signed a prenuptial agreement 11 years ago, before her marriage to Mr. Jonathan Ashford. That agreement clearly states that in the event of divorce, she receives no portion of the Ashford family assets. She's now claiming this agreement is fraudulent, despite her signature appearing on the document. This is simply a case of buyer's remorse, a woman who married into wealth and now wants more than she's entitled to. He gestured toward me dismissively. Mrs. Ashford has had a comfortable life for 11 years, living off the Ashford family wealth. Now that the marriage is ending, she's fabricated claims about contributing financially to the family business. We have documentation showing all capital investments came from Ashford family accounts. We have witnesses who will testify that Mrs. Ashford contributed nothing significant to the marriage or the family business. This is an open and shut case. He sat down, looking satisfied. Around the courtroom, I heard murmurs of agreement from the Ashford side. Adriana stood slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, this case is indeed straightforward, just not in the way opposing counsel suggests. This is a case about fraud, forgery, and financial manipulation. We will prove that the prenuptial agreement was forged without Mrs. Ashford's knowledge or consent. We will prove that Mrs. Ashford personally invested $8 million of her own money to save the Ashford family business from bankruptcy. And we will prove that Mrs. Celeste Ashford deliberately falsified financial records to steal credit for those investments. The murmurs on the Ashford side turned hostile. Celeste's face remained impassive, but I saw her hands tighten on her purse. Furthermore, Adriana continued, we will demonstrate a pattern of psychological manipulation and financial abuse spanning 11 years. The Ashfords didn't just forge a prenup, they constructed an elaborate fiction designed to ensure Mrs. Ashford would be stripped of everything she'd contributed when they decided she was no longer useful. These are serious allegations, Judge Whitmore said. I assume you have evidence? Substantial evidence, Your Honor. Then let's see it. Mr. Hamilton, call your first witness. Hamilton called Jonathan to the stand. My soon-to-be ex-husband looked uncomfortable in his suit, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He took the oath and sat down, his hands folded in his lap like a child called to the principal's office. Mr. Ashford, did your wife sign a prenuptial agreement before your marriage? Yes. Did she read it and understand it before signing? Jonathan hesitated. I believe so. You believe so? You were there when she signed it, weren't you? Another hesitation. Actually, no. My mother handled all the paperwork. She said Victoria, had signed it at her lawyer's office. Hamilton's confident expression faltered slightly. So you didn't personally witness her signing the document? No. But you saw the signed document afterward? Yes, my mother showed it to me. And the signature looked authentic to you? I'm not a handwriting expert. It looked like her signature. Hamilton sat down, clearly unhappy with how that had gone. Adriana stood for cross-examination. Mr. Ashford, in 11 years of marriage, did you ever discuss the prenup with your wife? No. It never came up. Isn't that odd? You had a legal agreement that would determine what happened to all your assets in case of divorce, and you never once discussed it with your spouse? We didn't plan on getting divorced. But you're getting divorced now. When did you first mention the prenup to Victoria? When I asked for the divorce. My mother reminded me about it. Your mother reminded you. So for 11 years, you forgot about this supposedly crucial legal document, until your mother reminded you it existed? Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. I guess so. Mr. Ashford, are you aware that your wife invested $8 million into Ashford Industries 3 years ago? That money came from family accounts. Did it? Do you personally manage those accounts? No, my mother handles the finances. So you have no direct knowledge of where the money actually came from? No, but my mother said, what your mother said is hearsay, Mr. Ashford. Let me ask you this, during your marriage, did you ever see your wife's bank statements, investment accounts, or financial records? No. She kept her finances separate. Why? She said she wanted to maintain her independence. Or perhaps she wanted to keep accurate records of her own money, separate from your family's accounts? Hamilton objected. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Whitmore said. Ms. Chen, please stick to facts. Of course, Your Honor. Mr. Ashford, one final question. In 11 years of marriage, did you ever defend your wife when your mother criticized her? The courtroom went silent. Jonathan's face flushed red. That's not fair. My mother wasn't criticizing, did you ever defend her? Yes or no? It's complicated. Family dynamics are, yes or no, Mr. Ashford? No, he whispered. I didn't. Thank you. No further questions. Jonathan stepped down, looking like he wanted to disappear. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was the man I'd loved, reduced to admitting in open court that he'd never once stood up for me. Hamilton called his next witness, Celeste Ashford. She took the stand with the bearing of a queen being forced to address peasants. She stated her name, took the oath, and settled into the chair with perfect posture. Mrs. Ashford, Hamilton began, can you explain the circumstances under which the prenuptial agreement was signed? Of course. Victoria was marrying into a prominent family with significant assets. It's standard practice to have a prenup. I arranged for the document to be prepared by my attorney, and Victoria signed it at her lawyer's office 3 weeks before the wedding. Did she have legal counsel review it? She said she did. I assumed she understood what she was signing. And the investments in Ashford Industries, can you explain where those funds came from? Family trust accounts. My late husband Marcus and I had established various trusts over the years. When the company faced difficulties, we drew on those resources to stabilize it. So Victoria's claim that she personally invested $8 million is false? Completely false. She had no such funds. She was making perhaps $200,000 a year at most when she married Jonathan. Where would she get $8 million? Celeste looked directly at me for the first time, and her expression was pure contempt. She thought she'd won. She thought her performance was convincing. She had no idea what was coming. Adriana stood for cross-examination, and I saw the slight smile on her face, the look of a lawyer who was about to destroy someone. Mrs. Ashford, you testified that Victoria signed the prenup at her lawyer's office. What was the name of that lawyer? Celeste blinked. I don't recall. You don't recall the name of the lawyer who handled such an important document? It was 11 years ago. Did you pay for Victoria's lawyer? I offered to, but she said she'd handle it herself. So you never actually met this lawyer or saw any documentation of Victoria's legal representation? No, but she assured me, Mrs. Ashford, we've subpoenaed records from every family law attorney in Boston who was practicing 11 years ago. Not one of them has any record of representing Victoria Morgan in a prenuptial agreement negotiation. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Celeste's composed facade cracked slightly. Perhaps she used a lawyer outside of Boston, or perhaps she never signed the document at all, and you forged her signature? That's absurd. Is it? Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A, the prenuptial agreement in question, and Exhibit B, a report from 3 independent handwriting experts. Adriana approached the bench with documents. Judge Whitmore reviewed them carefully while Celeste sat frozen in the witness stand. According to these experts, Adriana continued, the signature on the prenup shows several inconsistencies with Victoria's actual signature. The pressure points are wrong, the angle of certain letters is off, and the overall flow suggests someone copying a signature rather than naturally signing their own name. In short, this is a forgery. This is ridiculous, Celeste said, but her voice lacked conviction. Victoria signed that document. She's lying now because she wants money. Let's talk about money, Mrs. Ashford. You testified that the $8 million invested in Ashford Industries came from family trust accounts. I have here the complete financial records of those trust accounts for the relevant time period. Your Honor, may I approach? Judge Whitmore nodded. Adriana submitted another stack of documents. These records show that 3 years ago, the Ashford family trust accounts held approximately $1 million. Not $8 million. $1 million. And that $1 million was tied up in real estate that couldn't be liquidated quickly. So where did the $8 million come from? Celeste said nothing. I'll tell you where it came from. It came from Victoria Ashford's personal investment accounts. Here are the wire transfer records. $8 million, transferred in multiple installments over a 6-month period, from accounts solely in Victoria's name, to Ashford Industries. Not from family trusts. From her personal money that she'd earned and invested over years of working in finance. Adriana placed the records on the judge's bench. But that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is what happened next. Shortly after these transfers, the Ashford Industries books were altered to show the money coming from Ashford Family Trust instead of from Victoria's accounts. Someone deliberately falsified financial records to hide the true source of the investment. I don't know anything about that, Celeste said quickly. The accountants must have made an error. The accountants testified that they made the changes based on explicit instructions from you, Mrs. Ashford. Instructions to hide Victoria's contributions and make it appear the money came from family sources. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Ashford, did you or did you not instruct your accountants to falsify the source of these funds? Celeste's perfect composure was crumbling. It was for tax purposes. The categorization made more sense, so you admit you deliberately misrepresented where the money came from? It was family money. She was married to my son, so her money was family money. But the prenup you allegedly had her sign said her assets remained separate from family assets. You can't have it both ways, Mrs. Ashford. Either her money was separate, in which case you stole credit for her $8 million investment, or her money was family money, in which case the prenup you're enforcing is fraudulent. Celeste looked at Hamilton desperately, but her lawyer had no answer. She'd trapped herself in her own logic. Furthermore, Adriana continued, we have evidence that you deliberately poisoned your son's opinion of his wife over the course of 11 years. Constant criticisms, subtle undermining, social humiliation. All designed to make him see her as worthless, so when you decided it was time for them to divorce, he wouldn't question the prenup. I did no such thing. I simply had standards. Standards? Is that what you call telling family friends that Victoria was a gold digger? Telling business associates that she contributed nothing to the family? Repeatedly reminding Jonathan that he could do better? How dare you? We have witnesses, Mrs. Ashford. People who attended your dinner parties, your social events, your family gatherings. People who are willing to testify about the campaign of psychological abuse you waged against your daughter-in-law. Celeste stood up in the witness box, her face flushed with rage. She didn't belong in our family. She came from nothing, she was nobody, and she trapped my son into marriage. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Whitmore's expression hardened. Mrs. Ashford, sit down. She's trying to steal from us. Everything we've built, everything we are, she wants to take it all. I said sit down. Celeste slowly sank back into the chair, realizing too late that she'd just destroyed her own case with her outburst. Ms. Chen, the judge said, do you have anything else? Just one more exhibit, Your Honor. Mrs. Ashford testified that Victoria couldn't possibly have had $8 million to invest. I'd like to submit Victoria's financial records for the past 15 years. Tax returns, investment account statements, bank records, all showing a clear pattern of earning and saving money, building wealth through her work as an investment banker. Adriana placed a final stack of documents on the bench. As these records show, Victoria was making $500,000 a year by age 28. She invested wisely, lived below her means, and had accumulated approximately $10 million by the time Ashford Industries needed the capital infusion. She gave them $8 million and kept $2 million as her personal safety net. Judge Whitmore reviewed the documents, her expression growing more severe with each page. So let me make sure I understand, she said. Mrs. Victoria Ashford was a successful investment banker who'd accumulated substantial personal wealth. She married into the Ashford family, and when their business was failing, she used $8 million of her own money to save it. Mrs. Celeste Ashford then falsified records to make it appear the money came from family accounts. And now, during this divorce, Mrs. Celeste Ashford is attempting to enforce a prenup that was forged without Victoria's consent, which would leave Victoria with nothing despite her massive financial contribution to the family. That's an oversimplification, Hamilton started. Is any part of what I just said incorrect? The judge snapped. Hamilton said nothing. Judge Whitmore turned to Celeste. Mrs. Ashford, I've been on this bench for 20 years. I've seen every kind of fraud, every kind of manipulation. But I have rarely seen such a calculated, sustained campaign to rob someone of their contributions and their dignity. You forged a legal document. You falsified financial records. You engaged in what amounts to financial abuse and reputational destruction. And you did it all while taking $8 million from the woman you were abusing. Celeste's face was ashen. This court finds that the prenuptial agreement is invalid due to forgery. This court further finds that Mrs. Victoria Ashford is owed $8 million plus interest for her investment in Ashford Industries. Given the current value of the company and Mrs. Ashford's essential role in saving it from bankruptcy, this court awards her a 25% equity stake in Ashford Industries, or the cash equivalent of $7.5 million, whichever she prefers. The Ashford side of the courtroom erupted. Celeste stood up again, shouting objections. Hamilton tried to call for order. Jonathan sat with his head in his hands. Furthermore, Judge Whitmore continued, raising her voice over the chaos, this court is referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of fraud, forgery, and possible tax evasion. Mrs. Celeste Ashford, you may wish to retain criminal counsel. The gavel came down like a guillotine. We're adjourned. In the hallway outside the courtroom, my mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. You didn't let them break you. They tried, I said. For 11 years, they tried. Adriana was already on her phone, negotiating with Hamilton. The Ashfords would almost certainly appeal, but the evidence was damning. At minimum, I'd get my $8 million back. More likely, I'd get the equity stake, which was worth far more. Jonathan approached slowly, cautiously, like he was approaching a wild animal. Tori, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the forged prenup, or the money, or any of it. Yes, you did, I said calmly. Maybe not the specific details. But you knew your mother was manipulating things. You knew she'd been cruel to me. You knew something was wrong, and you chose not to look too closely because that would have required you to choose between us. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't change 11 years. Is there any chance, could we try again? Start over? I looked at the man I'd married, the man I'd loved, the man who'd let his mother destroy our marriage while he stood by and watched. No, Jonathan. There's no chance. Because even now, even after everything that came out in that courtroom, you're still thinking about what you want instead of acknowledging what you did. You want me to forgive you, to come back, to make this easier for you. But you've never once asked what I need, what I want, what would make me whole again. What do you want? I want you to sign the divorce papers. I want you to divide the assets fairly. I want you to get therapy and figure out why you let your mother control your life for 40 years. And then I want you to leave me alone. His face crumpled. You really hate me? No, I said, and realized it was true. I don't hate you. I just don't love you anymore. And I don't trust you. And I don't want to spend another day of my life trying to earn respect from people who will never give it. I walked away, my mother on one side, Adriana on the other. Behind me, I heard Celeste screaming at her lawyer, demanding an appeal, insisting this was all a mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. It was justice. 6 months later, I sat in my new office, the corner office, 47 floors up, with a view of the harbor. After the divorce settlement, I'd taken the equity stake in Ashford Industries rather than the cash. Within 3 months, I'd leveraged that stake into a controlling interest, buying out smaller shareholders who were nervous about the company's stability. I was now the majority owner and CEO of Ashford Industries. The business press called it a hostile takeover. I called it taking back what was always mine. Celeste had been forced to resign from the company entirely. She was facing criminal charges for the forgery and fraud. Her lawyers had negotiated a plea deal, 5 years probation, substantial fines, community service. She'd avoided prison, but her reputation was destroyed. Jonathan had moved to California, as far from his mother as he could get. He was in therapy, according to mutual acquaintances. Learning to be his own person for the first time in his life. I wished him well, genuinely. He'd been a victim of Celeste's manipulation too, just in a different way. My assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Ashford? Your 3 o'clock is here. Send them in. A young woman entered, nervous, clutching a portfolio. Ms. Ashford, thank you so much for seeing me. I'm a huge admirer of your work. Please, sit down. Tell me about your business plan. She was 25, ambitious, brilliant, with an idea for a financial tech startup. She reminded me of myself 15 years ago, before I'd let someone else's opinion diminish my own ambition. I listened to her pitch, asked questions, evaluated the business model. At the end, I made her an offer, seed funding in exchange for advisory board membership. Really? Her eyes went wide. You'll invest? You have a solid plan and the drive to execute it. That's worth investing in. After she left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city. Some people might say I'd won through revenge, through destroying the Ashfords. But that wasn't quite right. I'd won by refusing to stay small. By refusing to accept their narrative about who I was. By documenting, proving, and insisting on the truth even when everyone around me wanted to maintain the comfortable lie. The prenup had been forged. But so had the story of who I was, the gold digger, the nobody, the woman who'd contributed nothing. I'd simply replaced their fiction with facts. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, saw the article in Forbes. So proud. Dad would be too. I smiled. My father had died when I was in college, but he'd always told me I was capable of anything. He'd believed in me when no one else did. now I believed in myself. And that belief was worth more than any settlement, any equity stake, any victory in court. The girl from Ohio who wasn't supposed to belong in the Ashford family had ended up owning it. Not because I'd trapped anyone. Not because I'd gotten lucky. But because I'd been strategic, patient, and unwilling to accept being erased. Celeste Ashford had tried to write me out of the story. Instead, she'd handed me the pen. And I'd written my own ending.